When I first moved into Maple Creek Estates 3 years ago, I thought I'd found paradise. The neighborhood was picture perfect, like something straight out of a magazine. Perfect lawns, spotless sidewalks, and charming houses. What I didn't know was that my dream home came with a nightmare neighbor, Deborah Winters, our HOA president, who everyone secretly called Karen. I work from home as a software developer, so I had a front row seat to all of her surprise inspections. At first, her complaints were just petty. She claimed my mailbox was 2 inches tall. Then she left a note because my garbage cans were visible from the street for an extra 17 minutes. Each complaint came with a dramatic, handwritten warning and a threat of fines. I complied every time, not because I agreed, but just to keep the peace. I did, however, make sure my overly sweet replies of thank you for being so diligent were dripping with sarcasm. She never caught on. Things escalated when I decided to install solar panels last summer. I did everything by the book. I submitted the paperwork, got official HOA approval, and even hired a contractor recommended by my neighbors. The installation was seamless, and I was feeling great about saving money and helping the environment. 3 days later, I heard that infamous knock on my door. It was Karen, standing on my porch with her hair perfectly coiffed, sunglasses perched on her head, clutching a folder like it held national security secrets. "We need to talk about those," she said, pointing a rigid finger toward my roof. "Good morning, Deborah," I said politely. "Is there a problem?" "The committee approved them last month." For a split second, her fake smile faltered before she snapped back into character. "The approval was conditional," she said, talking down to me like I was a child. "Your panels reflect sunlight directly into my home office window at exactly 3:15 p.m. every day. It's impossible to work. They need to be removed immediately." I had to physically stop myself from laughing out loud. "I don't remember seeing any conditions in my approval letter," I replied. "And your house is on the completely opposite side of the neighborhood. The sun would literally have to bend around corners for that to happen." Her face turned bright red. "Well, perhaps you misunderstood. I'll have the committee review your case again. In the meantime, you have until the end of the week to take them down. I'll be happy to discuss this at the next committee meeting," I said calmly. "Just send me the details. I'll be sure to bring my approval letter." She stormed off, and I naively thought that was the end of it. It wasn't even close. Over the next 2 weeks, I was bombarded with violation notices for the most ridiculous things. I got a notice for excessive bird activity because I had a bird feeder. Then another one for unapproved vegetation visible from common areas because I planted a few tomato plants in my backyard. The peak of her insanity came when she convinced the committee to create a brand new rule banning all reflective roof installations and then tried to apply it retroactively to my already approved solar panels. Luckily, I had already consulted a lawyer friend. In our state, HOAs are legally prohibited from banning solar devices, and they absolutely cannot apply new rules to past approvals. I explained this at the next meeting, and the committee immediately backed down. Everyone except Karen, of course, who stormed out of the room in a huff. After that, everything was quiet for about a week. I actually started to think she'd finally given up. Then, the storm hit. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, I was in the middle of a really important video call for work when I heard a strange gurgling noise coming from upstairs. I rushed up to my home office to find water pouring through the ceiling. I quickly ended the call and followed the sound into the attic. What I saw was unbelievable. A garden hose was shoved through a small roof vent, actively spraying water all over my attic insulation. I crawled over to the vent, peered outside, and through the pouring rain, I saw a figure in a beige raincoat hurrying away. Even through the downpour, I recognized that platinum blonde bob instantly. It was Karen. I was furious, but I knew I couldn't confront her without solid proof. I pulled out my phone and photographed everything: the hose in the attic, the water damage, the trail of water running down from the roof. Then, despite the rain, I went outside and documented the hose leading from the vent all the way down to the ground. I called 911 to report the vandalism and then my homeowner's insurance. While I waited for the police, I noticed a line of muddy footprints in my yard. I followed them across the lawn, around the side of my house, and straight to the gate of Corinne's backyard. It was a literal trail leading right to her. When the officer arrived, I walked him through every single detail, showing him the pictures of the flood in my attic. He listened patiently, then said slowly, "So let me get this straight. You retelling me the president of your HOA climbed onto your roof during a storm and used a garden hose to flood your house?" "Yes, officer, that's exactly what I'm telling you." Thanks for watching, and if you've had your own crazy HOA stories, I'd love to read them in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. "I know it sounds insane," I said to the officer, "but yes. And it's all tied to an ongoing dispute about my solar panels." He wrote everything down and followed the evidence trail with me. When he reached Corinne's gate, he had me wait while he went to speak to her. Through the fence, I could see she had already changed out of her soaked clothes. She was waving her arms wildly, denying everything. Then, the officer asked to see her garden hose. That's when her entire expression changed. The hose was gone missing from its usual spot and her outdoor faucet was still dripping. The officer returned to my side and told me he was filing this under criminal mischief and property damage, and the damage was massive. I mean, soaked insulation, ruined drywall into separate rooms, and destroyed office equipment, including my main work computer. The first estimate came in at over $15,000 in repairs. Even the insurance adjuster was completely stunned by the extent of the damage. 3 days later, the officer called me again. They were officially pressing charges. Because the damage exceeded $10,000, Corinne was being charged with a felony. I was asked to come into the station for a full statement, and you better believe I brought every single document showing our previous conflicts. When I got home afterward, an emergency HOA meeting notice was waiting in my mailbox. Word had spread fast. Everyone knew Corinne had been arrested and then released on bail. The next evening, the community center was absolutely packed. Neighbors started sharing their own stories of Corinne's bullying and her abuse of power. The HOA vice president opened the meeting by addressing the elephant in the room. Their president was facing felony charges for intentionally flooding a homeowner's property. Corinne sat right there in the front row, arms locked across her chest, staring straight ahead like she was carved from stone. The vice president proposed an immediate vote to remove her from the board, and that's when Corinne finally snapped. "This is a witch hunt," she yelled, her voice shaking with rage. "He provoked me with those hideous solar panels. Do you have any idea what they're doing to our property values?" I was protecting this community. The room went dead silent. She had just confessed in front of 30 witnesses. The vice president cleared his throat and called for the vote. It was unanimous. Every single hand went up, except for Corinne's, of course. The gavel struck the table, sealing her removal from the board. Corinne just stared in complete disbelief. "You can't do this to me," she whispered, then much louder. "You can't do this. I made this neighborhood what it is. I've devoted 5 years to keeping it perfect." Jeff, my neighbor and the newly appointed interim president, stood up calmly. "Deborah, please return all HOA records and the community center keys by noon tomorrow." This meeting is adjourned. As everyone began to file out, Corinne remained frozen in her seat. I walked past her slowly. That's when she finally looked at me, and her eyes were filled with pure venom. "This isn't over," she hissed. I just replied quietly, "My lawyer will sort it out in court. By the way, I hear orange jumpsuits aren't very slimming." The look of shock on her face, that moment she finally realized she might actually go to jail, was something I will never, ever forget. Thanks for watching. If you like this story, be sure to hit that subscribe button for more. See you next time.